A group of soldiers searched carefully, determined to catch a criminal named Charlotte. Their leader was firm on capturing her no matter what. Charlotte, desperate to escape, ran into a dense forest. But among the soldiers, one person warned the captain by sharing a local story about the forest, saying it was home to a fierce demon lord who hated humans. Hidden nearby, Charlotte watched her pursuers leave, feeling guilty for not explaining herself to her friend Natalia. Her resolve was tested when she fell down a steep cliff. Despite the fall, she managed to call out Natalia's name before passing out. The next morning, Alan, the mansion's owner, came out and read the morning paper. Sensing something in the forest, he investigated and found a group of monsters gathered around something. Curious about her weightlessness, Alan wondered if she was a runaway or a victim of kidnapping. He thought the soldiers might be nearby, watching from hiding spots. Alan teleported behind the captain, who tried to attack but hit only air. Seeing the emblem on the soldier's armor, Alan recognized him as a royal guard from the nearby kingdom. Intrigued, he wondered why someone of high rank would be in this forest. The unit leader, not scared by Alan's magic, ordered his soldiers to surround him. They demanded Alan hand over Charlotte, calling her a major criminal who had shamed their nation. Upon hearing the soldiers' demands, Alan firmly refused to hand Charlotte over. He sensed something shady about the soldiers and their motives. In response to Alan's resistance, the captain ordered his men to attack simultaneously. However, Alan, using his magical abilities, conjured ice bindings that froze the soldiers in place before they could reach him. The soldiers, now trapped and panicking, were astounded by Alan's use of a nonverbal spell, realizing they had underestimated their opponent. Alan, preparing another spell, watched as the captain asked if he was the demon lord living in the forest. Alan corrected them, revealing that he was indeed the great demon lord. With a swift incantation of the phantom dream spell, he rewired their memories. Now, they believed Charlotte's trail had vanished, and they thought she had been devoured by a monster. He sent them off, their minds clouded, marching back to their kingdom like mindless zombies. Taking Charlotte inside, Alan tended to her minor wounds, even though she remained unconscious. As he cared for her, he found it hard to believe she was the major criminal everyone was searching for. When Charlotte woke up, she was startled to find Alan there. He offered her a warm herbal drink to help her recover. As they studied each other, Charlotte explained how she ended up in the forest while trying to reach the mansion. Meanwhile, Alan glanced at the newspaper, discovering that she was the fiancée of Prince Cecil, the second prince of the nearby kingdom. Anxious, she worried he might turn her in. But the demon lord reassured her, explaining his ability to discern lies by looking into people's eyes. He found no deceit in her gaze. Hearing his words, Charlotte broke down, her anxiety released in tears. Alan, overwhelmed with concern, feared that Charlotte might be physically hurt. To his surprise, she confessed that her emotional state was due to his unprecedented belief in her. Intrigued, the demon lord wanted to understand why she had been exiled. In a flashback, it was revealed that at a noble gathering, Prince Cecil publicly accused Charlotte of evil deeds, shocking her and everyone present. Despite her protests of innocence, no one questioned the prince's words. She was promptly taken away, much to Cecil's delight. Hearing her story, Alan was convinced she had been framed. He speculated that the prince's motives might have been rooted in Charlotte's status as a child of a mistress. Returning to the present, Charlotte apologized for burdening Alan with her problems and expressed her gratitude for his assistance. Despite her appreciation, she decided to leave, not wanting her wanted status to bring him any trouble. Alan, noticing the messy state of his home, interrupted Charlotte and asked if she was good at cleaning. He offered her a job as a live-in maid. Charlotte admitted that her cleaning skills were average, but Alan appreciated her honesty. He offered her a position where she would oversee the housework. He promised to pay her, provide 3 meals and snacks, and since there were extra rooms in the house, accommodation wouldn't be a problem. However, Charlotte, being a wanted criminal, hesitated. Despite this, he was still willing to hire her. He sat down and shared a story about betrayal, hoping to elicit empathy from her. He feigned a curse, claiming his heart would stop in the next 3 minutes unless she agreed to work for him. Perplexed, Charlotte couldn't understand why he was acting like a villain. However, his actions showed his genuine intent to save her. In less than a minute, she agreed to work for him. After her first thorough cleaning, the house sparkled. Alan praised her excellent work, finding it hard to believe she was a noble lady from a duke's family. Charlotte confessed that she helped at home a lot. Alan had already noticed the roughness of Charlotte's hands when he rescued her. He realized that her noble title was merely a facade. Her family treated her more like a servant than a noble lady. After the cleaning was done, Alan allowed Charlotte to do as she pleased until dinner. Charlotte was surprised by his lack of concern about her potentially stealing anything. The demon lord revealed that he had used most of his money to ensure her comfort, making her feel a bit guilty. In a blunt manner, Alan told her that he had work to do and didn't want to be disturbed. This made Charlotte feel bad as she left. Alan, not particularly fond of social interactions, intended to maintain this distance until she grew tired and left. Lost in his work, Alan was jolted when he realized it was dinner time. To his surprise, he found Charlotte meticulously counting the grains on the wooden floor, a sight that deeply moved him. As they moved to the living room, he discovered she had no hobbies. Her days were consumed by bridal training, mending clothes, and cleaning, leaving her no free moments. Alan was shaken, wondering how she could say such sad things with a smile. The situation grew even more heartbreaking when Charlotte shared her most cherished memory, her little sister Natalia giving her some bruised fruit. It was a rare treat that brought her immense happiness. Determined to introduce her to life's pleasures, Alan decided to give Charlotte a crash course on unconventional joys. He sold a few magical items and bought a variety of wrapped surprises, clarifying that his definition of naughty wasn't immoral but rather unconventional pleasures. He assured her it wouldn't involve anything illegal. The first naughty thing he presented was a dinner consisting solely of sweets. The table was laden with the most luxurious sweets and drinks in the kingdom. Charlotte pointed out the imbalance in her diet. Alan appreciated her logical response. It showed how she hadn't been properly cared for at home. Determined to bring her happiness, he handed her a piece of cake, insisting she eat it. Despite her initial reluctance, she blushed when he told her that he bought all the sweets to make her happy. As Charlotte took her first bite, she couldn't hold back her tears. Alan, expecting disappointment, was surprised when she revealed that no one had ever done something so kind for her. Tearfully, she questioned if someone like her was allowed to be happy. Alan gently wiped her tears away with the back of his hand and made a promise. From that moment on, he would teach her every pleasure in the world. They would travel to various destinations, aiming to make her the happiest person on earth. He couldn't explain his overwhelming kindness but assured her that she didn't need to repay him. He considered this endeavor a hobby. Although Alan wasn't fond of sweets, he ate cake to make Charlotte happy. As they enjoyed their treats, sinister red eyes observed them from the darkness of the forest. The demon lord, content with his decision, stayed up all night, meticulously planning a list of new experiences for Charlotte. However, in his excitement, he ended up creating plans that only he would enjoy. Disappointed, he tossed the list into the bin, vowing to create a better one. The next morning, Alan bumped into Charlotte, who was already holding a broom. They exchanged greetings, but he kept his nocturnal activities a secret. He checked to ensure she had covered her ordeal, learning that cleaning the mansion was part of her daily routine. Anger boiled within Alan as he contemplated Charlotte's innocence and the injustice she suffered, treated worse than a servant and unjustly exiled. Allowing her to sweep outside, Alan was left alone with his thoughts. He couldn't fathom why Charlotte didn't express resentment towards the prince or her family for their mistreatment. His contemplation was interrupted when he overheard Mia interacting with Charlotte. Alarmed that Mia might recognize Charlotte, Alan hurried down to intervene. He briefly introduced Charlotte as his new maid, and Mia, the cat lady, revealed herself as a courier from the shipping company, explaining that she was the one responsible for bringing his mail. She addressed Alan as the Demon Lord, which surprised Charlotte, but Alan nonchalantly mentioned it was just a nickname. As Mia took a closer look at Charlotte, she recognized her as the wanted fugitive but assured her that her lips were sealed. She also mentioned that her company didn't operate in the nearest kingdom. Alan headed inside briefly to fetch the potions he made for the magic users in town. During their conversation, Mia suggested that Alan move into town to make more money with his high-quality potions. Alan, however, was reluctant and snapped when Mia probed further. Mia commented that his attitude was precisely why he was known as the Demon Lord in town. Alan wasn't surprised. He revealed that kids even came to the forest to test their courage because of his reputation. Despite his ominous moniker, he reassured Charlotte that he was just a simple sorcerer who disliked people but couldn't ignore those in need. Mia labeled Alan as an antisocial nice guy and advised him to find his purpose for living. Alan scolded her again before inquiring about their mail order services. She provided them with a catalog, which he handed over to Charlotte. He instructed her to make a list of anything she might need, making it mandatory. To enforce his point, he threatened to buy her every item in the catalog if she didn't select something. Mia, amused, stated that if she were in Charlotte's place, she would have punched him to end his arrogant attitude. She playfully began punching Alan, suggesting it was a good way to forget bad things and release stress. Inspired by Mia's idea, a couple of days later, the ordered items arrived, including a punching bag. Alan revealed it and explained that he intended to use it for their daily, naughty, activity. He placed a picture of the prince on the bag and equipped Mia with a boxing glove. Alan explained that hitting the bag could help release built-up stress and anger. Mia hesitated, believing the prince might have a valid reason for his actions. Alan, skeptical, pointed out that Cecil wouldn't have treated her poorly if that were the case. Charlotte, however, felt guilty, believing she owed her family and blaming herself. Trying to make Charlotte understand the importance of expressing her feelings, Alan cast a spell on the gloves, compelling her to hit him instead. The punch landed impressively, sending Alan flying. Despite her scolding, he reassured her that he would never abandon her, no matter what she did to him. Charlotte was allowed to feel anything and say anything she wanted. After expressing her anger, Charlotte admitted she had been living in fear of many things. She promised to try to express herself more. Mia, observing the situation, was unhappy with how it turned out but hinted at her prediction that Alan and Charlotte might end up being a couple. Oblivious to Mia's thoughts, Alan and Charlotte looked at each other. Meanwhile, a mysterious lady watched them from the woods, feeling victorious, knowing she had found Charlotte. Alan asks Charlotte to choose between tea and coffee. Charlotte then decides to have what he's having, prompting Alan to scold her for not being honest. Charlotte reassures him that it's just a beverage choice and nothing serious. Alan points out that she usually wasn't allowed to make choices, to which she agrees, noting that running away from home was the first time she made a choice for herself. Alan considers it an important choice and encourages her to let him know if she wants to make similar choices. As Charlotte sips her tea, the window bursts open, and a Catwoman sits on the ledge. Alan praises her for finding him, and Charlotte asks Alan who the woman is. The Catwoman, revealed to be Aruka Crawford, introduces herself as an apprentice sorcerer engineer and claims to be Alan's sister. Alan corrects her, saying she's his stepsister, and explains that he lost his parents when he was younger, and the Crawfords took him in. Charlotte apologizes for prying, but Aruka assures her it's okay. Aruka asks Alan if Charlotte is his girlfriend, and they both deny it simultaneously. Alan firmly denies any romantic involvement with Charlotte, and Aruka questions if that doesn't make him sad. Alan insists he's indifferent, and Aruka persists in asking who Charlotte is. Alan introduces Charlotte to Aruka, but Charlotte wishes he hadn't told Aruka everything about her. Alan explains that there's no use hiding anything from Aruka because she'll find out eventually. He recounts how he and Charlotte met, and Aruka understands who Charlotte is and why she's with Alan. Aruka sympathizes with Charlotte's situation and offers to help. Charlotte questions if Aruka isn't suspicious of her, but Aruka vouches for her, stating that if Charlotte were a bad person, Alan would know. Aruka reveals her initial mission was to bring Alan home, but it doesn't matter anymore. She tells Alan that she'll take care of Charlotte, but Alan doesn't believe her, asserting that he can teach Charlotte better. They argue and decide to compete for who will teach Charlotte naughty things. In an alleyway in a populated town, Alan casts a shapeshift spell on Charlotte to change her hair color from blonde to black, and after some discussion, they head to a dress store, where Charlotte tries on a particular dress. In the midst of the competition between Aruka and Alan, Aruka thinks the new dress suits Charlotte very well. Alan, feeling out of place, reminisces about his childhood with the Crawfords. He recalls little Aruka initiating a chess competition, where Alan, despite always winning, sensed it was Aruka's way of getting close to him. Aruka calls out to Alan, revealing Charlotte behind a curtain in a new dress. Though Charlotte feels a bit embarrassed, Aruka assures her she looks great. Aruka asks for Alan's opinion, and he compliments Charlotte but comments that the dress is a bit too short. Aruka defends the length, but Alan thinks it might be Charlotte's first time wearing a short skirt. Suddenly, Alan punches his chest and coughs out red water. Aruka and Charlotte are surprised, but Alan insists he's okay, explaining he stopped his heart briefly to calm it down. And Aruka takes her back to the changing room. Alan reflects on wanting to know the current state of Na's kingdom, and what nobles and people think of Charlotte. Aruka offers to gather information from her dad's friends. She also asks if Alan wants her to look into the prince and his entire house. Alan agrees but mentions they can wait for now. Charlotte interrupts, asking for help with the dress clasps on her back. Aruka offers to assist and while doing so, notices scars from whips on Charlotte's back. Aruka pauses with surprise, but when Charlotte asks if everything is alright, Alan assures her that everything is fine. Noticing that Charlotte seems unaware of the scars, Alan raises his hands, emitting a bright green glow to heal her wounds. He lies to Charlotte, saying he's fixing a worn spot on her dress. Despite the magical healing, Alan reflects that Charlotte's scars must have run deep if simple magic could erase them. He remains furious internally, unable to comprehend the hatred directed at Charlotte. Alan shares with Aruka that they need to deal with the subjects of their earlier conversation. Aruka then surprises Alan by asking him to pick out a dress for Charlotte. Alan, uncomfortable with the task, randomly selects a dress that turns out to be less than decent. Leaving the dress shop, they discuss their plans. Alan reveals his intention to teach Charlotte how to relieve stress by splurging on things she wants. They visit a toy stand, but Alan's picks are met with disapproval. Sitting around a table after shopping, Aruka asks if Charlotte would have preferred to shop for more items, but Charlotte disagrees, feeling they bought too much. Alan insists it's necessary to teach her how to be a bad girl. An argument ensues between Alan and Aruka about taste and choices. Charlotte intervenes, urging them to stop arguing and agreeing not to get into a brawl. Determined not to lose, Alan suggests they continue shopping later in the day. As they walk down the street, Aruka spots a man in a magical wheelchair, and her enthusiasm for magical equipment prompts her to rush over. Alan and Charlotte continue, and Alan stops at a jewelry stand, picking out a piece for Charlotte. He told her he got the gift because it matched her eyes. He paid the owner, and told her to keep the change. He fixed the jewelry in Charlotte's hair, and she said it's her favorite gift. Alan felt happy at her compliment. While walking, someone bumped into Charlotte, pushing her into Alan's arms. Two guys claimed to be from a gang and confronted Charlotte. Alan didn't know the gang but wanted to settle things peacefully. One guy suggested forgiving him if Charlotte stayed with them. One guy insulted the gift, tried to touch Charlotte, but Alan stopped him. The other guy pulled out a magical sword, but Alan destroyed the sword and knocked the guy down, but Alan apologized to Charlotte for scaring her. She understood and reassured him. Alan thought Charlotte might leave, but she liked him. He admitted being addicted to teaching her naughty things. Suddenly, a big golem appeared, accusing Alan of defeating his friends. Alan faced the golem confidently, asking if he's Megas. The golem asked why he cared. Alan confirmed he's Meath, finding it nostalgic. He lightly tapped the golem, laughed, and angered him. The golem punched Alan, who didn't move much. Alan said the golem has a bad memory and introduced himself. The golem apologized, silencing his gang. Charlotte was confused, and Aruka explained that Alan graduated from the Magical Academy at 12, earning the nickname Great Demon Lord. Alan revealed it's been a while since he was called that. He told the golem, Meath, that he caused trouble for someone else with a sinister smile. Megas is trembling, and Alan attempts to explain Charlotte's significance in their relationship, but he struggles to find the right words. After a moment of contemplation, he concludes that she's a precious woman to him and silently conveys this to Meath. The following day, Mia and Aruka visit Alan at his forest house and find him sitting gloomily on the steps. Perplexed by his condition, they inquire about what's wrong. Unable to figure it out themselves, they decide to ask Alan directly. Alan shares that he didn't realize how close they had become. Aruka has a realization and suggests that the issue might be related to Charlotte. Alan is surprised by Aruka's insight and asks how she knew. She explains it's evident because nothing else could bother him that much. Recalling the previous night, Alan and Charlotte were having tea when he proposed paying her for her work. Charlotte hesitated, feeling she wasn't useful enough. Alan insisted she deserved compensation, and after some back and forth, Charlotte accepted the pay. She thanked him, and Alan advised her to use the money for herself. She mentioned wanting to go to town alone, and Alan is now regretting agreeing to it. In the present, Alan seeks advice from Mia and Aruka expresses surprise at Charlotte's unexpected behavior. Alan clarifies that Charlotte initially took back her request, but he encouraged her to go ahead. Aruka is surprised he accepted, and Alan explains he had no choice after Charlotte's pleading. Maya points out that he chose a difficult path, and Alan expresses concern for Charlotte's welfare. Now in town, Charlotte is disguised to avoid recognition. Unexpectedly, Alan, Mia, and Aruka peek out of an alleyway. Aruka is surprised that Alan didn't suggest tailing Charlotte himself. Charlotte pulls out a map. Alan is proud of her for using the map, and they heave a sigh of relief that they haven't been discovered. Aruka asks Alan why Charlotte decided to go to town alone, and he explains it's to buy something, though Charlotte has kept it a secret. Mia and Aruka are shocked that Charlotte didn't disclose this to Alan, but he is happy that she is becoming her own person by keeping secrets. As Charlotte walks around town, unsure of where to go, Alan expresses concern to Aruka that Charlotte seems lost, and Aruka agrees, stating it could be a problem. Charlotte, looking at the map, appears uncertain of her direction, prompting Alan to worry that she might be in danger. Alan asks Aruka what she means. She tells him that judging by the direction Charlotte is going, she might end up in the Mere District. The Mere District is a dangerous area controlled by a gang called Serpent Fang, led by Gro the Viper Charmer. Alan is alarmed by this revelation. Aruka asks what they can do, suggesting she could bump into Charlotte and act as though it was an accident. Alan tells her not to bother, stating that since it's Charlotte's first adventure, they shouldn't interfere. He announces he has something to take care of, leaving Mia and Aruka to watch over Charlotte. Mia and Aruka keep an eye on Charlotte, wondering what she's looking for. They notice she's approaching an unsafe area, and Mia wonders which map she's using. Aruka wonders where Alan went as Charlotte looks around. Several men approach her, causing Mia and Aruka to worry. Charlotte is now surrounded by members of the Mere gang. Mia and Aruka want to rush to Charlotte's aid but stop when the gang welcomes her, throwing a pseudo-welcome party. Gro introduces himself, and all the gang members welcome her, surprising Charlotte. Mia and Aruka are perplexed. Suddenly, Alan comes back, and Aruka asks where he's been. He explains that he taught the gang members a lesson, ensuring they treat Charlotte properly. Mia notices the gang members are beaten up, and Charlotte asks if they're okay. Surprised she notices their injuries, she presents Gro with a magic potion to heal their wounds. Touched, the gang members bow in gratitude, vowing to change their ways. Charlotte tells them they've thanked her enough, and Alan praises her for earning their trust. Gro asks about her relationship with the Demon Lord, and Charlotte begins to answer with Alan watching from an alleyway in anticipation. She tells Gro how Alan took her in when she didn't have a home, concluding that he's her master. Alan is disappointed by her description. The gang members think she was threatened into submission, and Gro believes their relationship doesn't seem right. Angry but understanding their perspective, Alan thinks Charlotte is too kind and modest for someone known as the Demon King. Charlotte assures the gang members that Alan is a misunderstood gentleman. They can't believe their ears as she adds that Alan teaches her naughty things, getting the wrong idea. Aruka and Mia are disappointed with her poor description, and Alan tells them he'll address it. Charlotte thanks the gang members and takes her leave, and Alan is grateful she wasn't harmed. Mia points out that Charlotte is heading further into the dangerous district. Alan, with a sly smile, tells them there's nothing to worry about. Aruka hopes he won't pull the same stunt again, and Alan confidently mentions taking control of the whole area. Aruka thinks it's a dumb decision as Alan goes through the district, taking down different squads. Aruka and Mia, displaying the same prowess, effortlessly navigate through the district, ensuring there's no threat left. They defeat all the gangs, securing the area for Charlotte. Aruka suggests to Alan that there might be no need to continue watching over Charlotte now that the district is clear. Alan hesitates, but Mia steps in, offering to watch over Charlotte alone. She suggests that Alan and Aruka wait until Charlotte completes her shopping. While enjoying tea at a table, Aruka asks Alan a question, but his mind seems elsewhere. Maya returns at that moment, informing them that Charlotte has finished her shopping without any issues. Alan commends Mia and asks about Charlotte's well-being. Mia reassures him, mentioning that Charlotte ran into one of her acquaintances and is now safe. She adds that Charlotte and her friend will be joining them soon. Aruka notices Charlotte approaching and beckons her over. They exchange pleasantries, and the jewelry shop owner, who escorted Charlotte, commends Alan. Confused, Alan learns that the townsfolk were talking about him, feeling safer after he cleared out the gang members from the district. Aruka teases Alan for inadvertently helping people, and the shop owner thanks him on behalf of the town. Alan, feeling the strangeness of being thanked for something he did for Charlotte, modestly accepts her gratitude. The shop owner praises Alan, assuming Charlotte is his girlfriend. They clarify they're not in a relationship, and the shop owner wishes them luck before leaving. She produces their presents, recognizing them as goods from a new shop. Charlotte gifts them as a token of gratitude for their kindness. Alan feels left out, asking if she has something for him. Charlotte apologizes, stating she couldn't find anything suitable. Alan then told her that he would have appreciated anything she had given him. Suddenly, Charlotte notices a part of his robes that's frayed and offers to mend it. She then told Alan to share his likes for future gifts ideas. To which Alan agrees. The episode then ends with him feeling a strange warmth in his heart and vowing to cherish every moment with Charlotte. As the day turned to evening, Alan was deep into his book while Charlotte, just finishing her own reading, stood in front of him. The book had taught her a lot about where they were. Charlotte sat down next to him, flipping through her book that talked about the school Alan and Aruka had gone to. Alan suggested she pick a place she'd like to visit. At first, Charlotte hesitated because she already owed Alan. So, Alan did something extreme. He pretended to put a curse on himself, making Charlotte change her mind. But then, Mia showed up with a special gift, an envelope with a trip to the Unoha region for two. The next morning, Alan and Charlotte started their journey in a car surrounded by beautiful forests. Charlotte started chatting with Alan, telling him about a time she hid in a horse-drawn carriage, scared and unable to enjoy the view. Alan reassured her that she was safe now. Charlotte thanked Alan for his concern and asked if he minded her company, wondering if she should have asked Aruka instead. Alan explained that Aruka was busy with tasks in the kingdom. Surprisingly, Mia and Aruka appeared on horses, revealing they had planned this trip to the hot spring to bring Alan and Charlotte closer. The scene shifted back to Alan, who suddenly felt a shiver without knowing why. Charlotte looked out of the carriage window and saw they were approaching the hotel mentioned in her book, the most famous one in the Unoha region, a 3-star resort with a hot spring. They were known for various services, from food to massages, with many loyal customers. When Alan asked if that was the place she wanted to visit the most, Charlotte hesitated, and he caught her lie, surprising her with his insight. Alan, sensing that something was off, continued searching the book for the place that had left a strong impression on Charlotte. Despite her being happy with their current destination, Alan couldn't shake off the curiosity. Charlotte, feeling uneasy, asked him to stop investigating. But Alan persisted, eager to uncover the place that left an impression. Charlotte eventually confessed that it was a spot typically favored by children. Alan understood her sentiment, assuring her that doing things from childhood could be wonderful and even a bit mischievous. He promised not to make fun of her choice, emphasizing that she could share anything with him. Upon arriving at the hotel, Charlotte was awestruck by its beauty and grandeur. At the Unoha resort, the receptionist welcomed them, and after Alan introduced himself, she informed them that their room was ready. Alan agreed to her guidance and asked if the hot spring was open. The receptionist confirmed it and mentioned that it wasn't crowded. Alan suggested they bathe in the hot spring first, sparking excitement in Charlotte. The receptionist revealed they were thought to be spending their honeymoon there. Both Alan and Charlotte were shocked, clarifying that they were not married or in a romantic relationship. The receptionist explained that their tickets were for lovers and couples, realizing Mia had deceived them. Meanwhile, Aruka and Mia were secretly at the same hotel, in hiding, planning their whole trip. The receptionist then offered to change the package, but Alan, realizing that this was the most luxurious one, agreed to take the package for lovers and couples. While walking through the hotel, the receptionist brought them a welcome drink in a single glass, explaining it was part of the lovers and couples package, making Charlotte extremely embarrassed. Aruka, observing from a distance, was delighted that her brother and Charlotte were acting like a couple. After being guided to the hot spring location, which had various facilities, the receptionist informed them it was a mixed bath, requiring swimsuits. Charlotte was taken to choose a swimsuit, and Alan, in his thoughts, wondered how he'd react to seeing her in one. Not long after, Charlotte then emerged in her chosen swimsuit, shocking Alan, and they headed to the pool. Charlotte, experiencing her first hot spring, was reassured by Alan that there was a naughty way to enjoy it. The resort employee brought them ice cream that Alan had ordered, and Alan used magic to prevent the ice cream from melting due to the heat. Meanwhile, the other visitors, inspired by Alan and Charlotte, also ordered ice cream. They then requested Alan to cast a spell on their ice creams so that it wouldn't melt as well. The resort employee also mentioned a few other attractions in the area, including diving sites, beaches, and a hill for observing fenris. Alan and Charlotte were fascinated by the magical and noble creatures that supposedly brought good luck. However, their excitement dwindled when the resort employee informed them that the creatures were in their breeding season, making it unlikely to spot them. Disappointed, the employee recommended another location, the magical Unoha garden. Returning to their room, Alan and Charlotte were delighted by the southeast view. Their joy turned to surprise when they discovered heart-shaped decorations on their bed, suggesting they were perceived as a married couple. On the flip side, Aruka and Mia were eavesdropping from the next room, anticipating Alan's next move. Alan, trying to diffuse the tension, suggested they get some rest and go to sleep. Recalling the receptionist's claim that the bed could make them dream anything, Alan revealed its unique creation by skilled dream imps. Deciding to turn in early, Alan admired the bed's comfort, the perfect pillow height, and the softness of the mattress. However, he was shocked to realize he was sharing the bed with Charlotte. When Charlotte asked if he was asleep, Alan admitted he was still awake, inquiring if she had chosen a dream. Charlotte shared her desire to see her late mother, and Alan used a sleep-inducing light spell to help her quickly fall asleep. After Charlotte drifted off, Alan cast a sleep spell called the Deadly Drop, making him, Mia, and Aruka all fall asleep. In the morning, Alan woke up to find Charlotte awake with tears in her eyes. She revealed that she had seen her mother in her dream, who spoke reassuringly about Alan and her safety from the other side. Meanwhile, in the other room, the receptionist knocked on the door, opening it to find Mia and Aruka dozing off on the floor. Alan and Charlotte decided to explore the magical animal park in Unoha. Charlotte expressed her long-standing dream of visiting this beautiful place, and they marveled at the massive and majestic magical creatures. Charlotte shyly spoke to Alan, expressing her concern about not wanting to upset him by dragging him around. In response, Alan reassured her that he would be truly happy when she is happy. Charlotte then pointed at a small creature in a picture but couldn't bring herself to speak. Understanding her desire, Alan suggested they go there, and Charlotte admitted her love for the place since childhood. Charlotte went to buy something. She explained they were hairbands, and she wanted two so they could wear them together. Alan was quite hesitant at first, but he eventually wore the hairbands with Charlotte. The scene shifted to a man accompanied by wild wolves, seemingly preparing for a fight. We are then brought back to Alan and Charlotte, as they stroll through the garden. When Alan saw a sign about hell capybaras, strong, formidable magical creatures that could easily destroy a city, the zookeeper then assured him they were resting deep in the forest. Charlotte, however, seemed angry and spoke in strange words. Worried, Alan approached her, thinking she might be losing her mind. To his surprise, she thanked him for being with her and promised to fulfill his requests. Alan realized she was happy playing with the small animals, discovering her love for them. This made Alan speak the language of magical beings to two rabbits, negotiating their help to play with Charlotte in exchange for food. However, to his surprise, the other animals had already surrounded Charlotte, making her their friend easily. Later, Charlotte expressed her happiness to Alan, and animals gathered around her again. Alan stood up, explaining the various skills, including magic, and assured Charlotte he never deceived people. Demonstrating his nonverbal communication skill, he praised Charlotte's talent as an animal tamer. In his thoughts, Alan remembered a similar situation when he first met Charlotte deep in the forest and animals surrounded her. Suddenly the zookeeper approached them, seeking their help, believing them to be renowned magical creature tamers. The scene shifted to a large building where a man in white recognized Alan as a member of the Crawford family. Astonished, he requested Alan's assistance, leading him to an area with formidable magical creatures. The director explained that they had captured the Fenrir for the first time, but communication was impossible, hindering their ability to treat its injuries. Alan was deeply concerned about the injured Fenrir separated from its family due to illegal poaching. Realizing the lack of skilled tamers on their staff, Alan offered to help the Fenrir in any way he could. However, a new problem arose. An employee informed them that Fenrir's mother was approaching. Panic spread as they had used a trace removal spell, making it impossible for the mother to know their location unless she was a high-level being. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Alan suggested speaking to the mother to gain her understanding. Despite the fear among the other tamers, Alan reassured them and instructed the evacuation of guests from the park as a precaution. Charlotte, having previously mentioned her talent for taming magical creatures, insisted on talking to the baby Fenrir. After some hesitation, Alan agreed, acknowledging her determination and hidden talent. In the hotel, Mia and Aruka received the security announcement about the Fenrir, raising concerns about the potential disruption to their vacation. However, Mia's confidence in Alan reassured them of their safety. Alan suddenly appeared behind the girls who had been following them, acknowledging that he knew they were tailing him. Instead of being upset, he asked them to help him with something. The scene then shifts to a large group of Fenrirs heading angrily toward the park. Alan, standing above to watch them, decides to create a barrier around the resort to protect everyone inside the Unoha resort. Using his ice magic, he immobilizes the Fenrirs temporarily, buying time for Charlotte to finish convincing the little Fenrir. Suddenly, the ground splits, and the mother of the little Fenrir appears. Alan realizes the gravity of the situation and tries to avoid her attacks using his magical defense. Despite his attempts to communicate, the mother Fenrir refuses to listen and attempts to strike him. Alan falls to the ground, unsure of what to do. Out of the blue, he is approached by a magical creature, a capybara from the abyss named Gosetsu. Gosetsu informs Alan that killing Fenrir would prevent its reunion with its child, greatly saddening Charlotte. He reveals his goal is to save Charlotte. Gosetsu explains that he had observed Charlotte's life and realized that Alan had to be eliminated to protect her. Launching a powerful fireball attack at Alan, Gosetsu tries to convince him that he's wasting his time with Charlotte. In their intense battle, Gosetsu reveals his plan to unleash his sealed power to destroy the kingdom of Neros. Alan questions if this would make Charlotte happy. Just as things seem dire, flying creatures appear, and Charlotte arrives with all the animals she had tamed, including the little Fenrir. Charlotte managed to talk the injured Fenrir and convince it to accept treatment. Alan, astonished by her achievements, expresses his joy and tells Charlotte that she has become someone he can rely on. Thrilled, Charlotte explains her efforts to catch up with him, but the animals express concern for her well-being. Alan questions whether Charlotte understands the language of the magical creatures, to which she admits that her understanding is not perfect, but she can grasp the essence of what they are trying to convey. Alan reflects on his own journey, taking 6 months to master the initial language of magical creatures with proper training. He acknowledges Charlotte's growth as a powerful magical creature tamer, capable of standing by his side. When Alan questions Charlotte about the situation between the little Fenrir and its mother, she reveals that the capybara lied to the mother, framing Alan as a hunter. This capybara manipulated her with falsehoods, claiming that Alan would bring her sorrow. The capybara then asks Charlotte to leave Alan, suggesting that he will save her properly. Charlotte denies this, stating that Alan has given her a peaceful life. Alan requests Charlotte to step back and surprises the capybara by launching a powerful attack with fireballs, delivering a decisive blow that defeats the capybara. Concerned, Alan uses healing magic to revive him, and the capybara apologizes for the trouble he caused and acknowledges Alan. The park employee then expresses her gratitude for saving the park, but Charlotte, feeling embarrassed, credits the zookeepers for treating Fenrir's injuries and clarifies that she only spoke to the little one. Alan praises Charlotte, stating that her actions were crucial for the success. Then the employee informs them that their carriage is ready, and thanks Charlotte and Alan for everything. Suddenly the Fenrirs approach. At the same time, Erica and Mia appear at the resort, and it turns out Alan had asked them to capture the hunters. Alan reveals the faces of some of the hunters, and the Fenrir creatures express anger and a desire to attack them. Alan, using his magic, boosts their defense, turning the situation around. After the confrontation, the young Fenrir that Charlotte persuaded to undergo the treatment expresses a desire to follow them back. With the mother granting permission, Alan asks if the cub can leave the pack and the concierge reassures them that the Fenrir can return to its family in under an hour. This eases Charlotte's worries, and Alan feels much more comfortable offering for it to stay after hearing this. The Demon Lord is pleased that their family is growing, and his comment about considering her family makes Charlotte blush, though he's unaware of the effect his words have on her. They leave the resort, and Gosetsu follows Charlotte's bodyguard as a gesture of apology for the trouble caused. However, Charlotte is unfamiliar with the capybara, but the creature insists on being part of the family. Seeing this, Alan gets annoyed because no one has allowed it to join them and orders it to return to the zoo. A few days pass since their return to the mansion, and Charlotte has been spending a lot of time with the Fenrir, whom she has named Lou. However, the cub has not yet warmed up to Alan. Gosetsu then comments on how Lou has taken Charlotte's attention away from Alan, to the point where they spend less time testing the boundaries of naughtiness. The Demon Lord gazes out the window, acknowledging the truth in what the capybara says, but he's happy that Charlotte now has a goal. It is revealed that on the night of their return, Charlotte expressed her desire to become a magical creature tamer. He is glad to see how positive she has become, transforming from the girl who used to count the grooves in the wood on the floor for fun. Alan agreed to her request, and Charlotte impressed him with her studiousness and quick learning. He has discovered a new side to her every day since she started this endeavor. Currently, Charlotte practices what she has learned by instructing Lou. Alan is shocked to see how effortlessly Lou navigates the obstacle course, indicating that Charlotte has mastered the skill and likely has an unparalleled ability to communicate with Fenrirs. Gosetsu, however, irritates Alan by teasing him about calling Charlotte his beloved student. But when the Demon Lord tries to pat Lou while praising him, the creature nearly bites his hand off. Charlotte scolds Lou and apologizes to Alan for her familiar action, which only proves to the Demon Lord that she is the only one who can build trust with Lou. Gosetsu feels that Charlotte has reached the level of having a beast conversation, a type of magic that allows tamers familiars to speak the human language. However, the capybara reveals that it is self-taught in this form of communication. Charlotte then casts the spell on Lou, giving it the ability to talk. The first thing Lou asks is why Alan is touching his mother. Hearing Lou speak excites Charlotte, but it is evident that Lou harbors a strong dislike for Alan. The demon lord then creates a tub for them to soak in. He attempts to ban the capybara from using it. In response, Gosetsu transforms into her human form, surprising everyone with the revelation that she is a lady. Alan becomes smitten watching Charlotte splashing around. In a later scene, Alan and Charlotte sit to talk, and the topic of the previous owner comes up. The Demon King reveals that the house once belonged to an eccentric elf who disappeared 30 years ago. Given the isolated location of the house, it's not surprising that she was an unsociable workaholic. When she suddenly went missing, people speculated wildly about her fate. Some said she fell off a cliff in despair, while others believed her body was taken over by mushrooms. Due to these rumors, Alan got the house at a discount. Charlotte looks horrified and points to Gosetsu, who is lying in the pool covered in mushrooms. They rush over, only to find that the capybara is fine. As they try to figure it out, Dorothea suddenly pops out from the ground, accusing them of stealing her mushrooms. Everyone is surprised to see her. After the tension reduces, Dorothea takes them down to her basement and apologizes for scaring them. She introduces herself and is shocked to hear that Alan lives in the mansion upstairs because she considers it hers. It turns out Dorothea is the elf who disappeared 30 years ago. She is baffled to hear that so much time has passed but is delighted to see rare magical creatures living in her place. Gosetsu notes that Dorothea is a dark elf, a rare breed with an elite status. But Alan worries about the ownership rights since the previous resident is still alive, anticipating a legal nightmare. He then asks Dorothea to sell the mansion to him. But she gives a mischievous smile and expresses her willingness to do so. However, the elf prefers to live in the basement and doesn't want money. Instead, she wants their help to get out of a predicament. Initially, Alan is reluctant, but Charlotte pleads with him to hear Dorothea out. Dorothea then explains that she used to be an industry-popular author of multiple genres and a self-proclaimed genius. She explains that one day, she tried to write a romance novel and got writer's block. But as the deadline approached with no progress, she went into hiding to dodge her extremely scary editor. Dorothea tells Alan to help by threatening to reclaim her mansion. This idea came after observing Charlotte and Alan interact. She is confident that they can help her overcome her block by acting out some romantic scenes to inspire her. And with that, the episode came to an end. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.